11:47 p.m. when Alina stepped out of her office building. The winter wind cut through her coat, and the parking lot lay in front of her, an empty stretch of asphalt with only a few flickering streetlights. She had stayed late, finishing some urgent reports. Most of her colleagues had left hours ago. The silence felt unnatural, almost too heavy. As she walked toward her car, her heels clicking against the cold pavement, she noticed him, a man, tall and thin, standing under the farthest streetlight. His face was hidden in shadow, but his head was tilted. Watching her, she slowed her pace, her breath turning white in the air. Maybe he was just another late worker, she thought. Maybe he was waiting for someone, but as she kept walking, he didn't move. Her heart started to thump louder. She quickened her steps, the sound of her heels grew faster, and then she heard it. Another set of footsteps behind her, perfectly matching her pace. She glanced over her shoulder. The man was no longer standing under the streetlight. He was halfway across the parking lot. Alina's throat tightened. She reached into her purse, fumbling for her car keys, but the metal seemed to vanish under her shaking fingers. The footsteps grew louder, closer. She could almost feel his presence at her back. Finally, she found the keys, nearly dropping them as she pressed the unlock button. The beep of her car was like a lifeline. She yanked the door open, dove inside, and slammed it shut, locking it instantly. For a moment, she just sat there, her breath ragged, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. Then she looked up into the rearview mirror. The man was standing directly behind her car, his face still hidden, but his head tilted at that unnatural angle. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there. She stared at him, frozen, unsure if she should start the engine or scream. And then in the blink of an eye, he was gone. Panic surged through her. She started the car and sped out of the lot, her eyes darting between the road and the mirrors. But the streets were empty. When she finally got home, she locked every door, every window, and turned on all the lights. Sleep was impossible. Every sound made her jump. The next morning, she forced herself to go to work, convincing herself it was all in her head. Maybe she had imagined it. That night, as she left the building again, she felt the same cold air on her skin. She stepped into the parking lot, scanning every shadow. It looked empty, until she glanced at her car. Pinned under her windshield wiper was a small piece of paper. With trembling hands, she pulled it free. There were only 3 words, scrawled in messy handwriting. Nice to see you. What if you woke up in the middle of the night and realized you weren't alone in your own bedroom? Sana always slept with her bedroom window slightly open. The winter air was crisp, and she loved the way it made her blankets feel warmer. It was 2:16 a.m. when she woke up that night. She didn't know why at first. There was no loud noise, no nightmare, just a strange heaviness in the air. She lay still for a moment, listening. The house was quiet, too quiet. Even the usual hum of the fridge seemed distant. Then she heard it, a slow, steady sound, breathing, not hers, not the soft rhythm she knew so well. This was heavier, deeper, as if someone was standing right next to her bed. Her heart stopped. She didn't dare open her eyes, afraid of what she might see. Maybe it was a dream, she told herself. Maybe she was still half asleep. The breathing grew louder. She could almost feel the air shift above her, warm and damp against her cheek. She forced herself to open her eyes just a little, and saw nothing but darkness. Her mind raced. Should she grab her phone, scream, run? And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the breathing stopped. The silence was worse. She slowly reached for her bedside lamp, her fingers shaking. With one motion, she flicked it on. The room was empty. Her window was still open, the curtains swaying gently in the night breeze. She got up, heart pounding, and locked it tight. After checking the rest of the apartment, she convinced herself it was the wind. But deep down, she knew wind didn't breathe like that. The next night, she made sure the window was closed and locked before sleeping. Still, at 2:16 a.m., her eyes snapped open. She didn't know why, but she felt it. That same heavy air, pressing in around her. And then, the breathing started again. This time, it was coming from the corner of her room. She sat up slowly, squinting into the darkness. Her phone lay on the nightstand. She grabbed it, turned on the flashlight, and aimed it toward the sound. Nothing. She exhaled, half laughing at herself, until the beam of light hit her closet door. It was open, just a crack. Sana knew she had closed it before sleeping. Her breath quickened as she stepped toward it, light trembling in her hand. She reached out and pushed the door open. The closet was empty, but on the inside of the door, written in black marker, were the words, "Stop closing the window."
Triple check your locks before bed. But what if someone is already inside your home? Imran lived alone in a small 2-bedroom apartment. He wasn't paranoid, but he was careful. Every night before sleeping, he checked each window, each door, making sure everything was locked. It was a Thursday evening. He had just finished dinner and was watching TV when his phone buzzed. It was a message from his upstairs neighbor. "Hey, Were you just in the hallway? Thought I saw you walk past my door." Imran frowned. He hadn't left his apartment all evening. He replied, "No, I'm home. Why?" The neighbor wrote back instantly. "Must have been someone else. Looked like they were wearing black. Just be careful." A chill went down his spine. He brushed it off, locked his front door again, and went to bed around midnight. At 3:08 am, he woke up. The TV in the living room was on. He was sure he had turned it off before sleeping. He grabbed the baseball bat he kept under his bed and crept toward the living room. His heart was pounding so loudly he could barely hear the faint sound of the TV. When he reached the doorway, the screen was showing static. White noise filled the room. That's when he noticed something else. A smell. A strong scent of cologne, not his. He stepped forward, scanning the room. The windows were still locked. The front door was locked. He turned off the TV and stood there in silence, trying to listen for any sound. From somewhere deeper in the apartment came the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps. They were coming from the second bedroom. Imran's mouth went dry. He had no roommate, no guest. That room was empty, or at least it should have been. He gripped the bat tighter and approached the door. It was almost closed, just a narrow gap of darkness. He took a deep breath, pushed it open, and the room was empty. No furniture, no movement, nothing. He exhaled shakily, telling himself maybe he had imagined the sound. Then his phone buzzed again. A new message from an unknown number. "Why did you stop checking the closet?" The bat nearly slipped from his hands. He turned to look at the small closet in the corner of the empty bedroom. Its door was closed. Very slowly, he reached out and pulled it open. The closet was dark. Then, in the shadows, something shifted. A tall figure stepped forward, dressed in black, face completely covered by a mask. The stranger didn't speak. They just tilted their head and began to walk toward him. Imran dropped the phone, ran from the room, and slammed the apartment door behind him. He didn't stop running until he was outside on the street, barefoot in the freezing night air, pounding on his neighbor's door. When the police arrived minutes later, the apartment was empty. No sign of forced entry. But on the inside of the closet door, they found something carved into the wood. See you tomorrow. What would you do if the last bus of the night picked up someone who wasn't supposed to exist? It was almost midnight when Michael boarded the city's last bus. The streets were nearly empty, and the orange glow of the streetlights flickered through the windows as the bus rolled on. There were only 3 people inside: Michael, a tired-looking driver, and a young woman sitting near the middle. She had long black hair, wore a gray coat, and kept staring straight ahead, unmoving. Michael sat at the back, scrolling through his phone. Every stop, the bus slowed, but no one got on or off. The city outside felt deserted. At one point, the bus passed a closed gas station. A figure stood just beyond the light, barely visible. A man, tall, wearing something dark. The driver didn't slow down, but when Adil glanced back toward the middle of the bus, his stomach tightened. The man was now sitting across the aisle from the young woman. Michael hadn't seen him board. There had been no stop, no door opening. The woman still didn't move. She sat frozen, her eyes locked straight ahead. The man, meanwhile, turned his head slowly toward Michael. His face was pale, too pale, and his eyes seemed almost black in the dim light. Michael quickly looked away, trying to rationalize it. Maybe he had dozed off and missed a stop. Maybe the man had been there all along. But when the bus pulled up to the next stop, the doors opened to empty air. No one boarded. No one left. The man in black smiled. Michael's pulse began to race. He decided to move closer to the driver, maybe even get off early. He stood up, but the bus lurched suddenly, making him stumble. When he looked again, The man was gone. He blinked, scanning the rows. Only the woman remained, still staring straight ahead. Michael took a step toward her. "Miss, are you okay?" he asked. She didn't answer. He moved closer, and that's when he saw her hands. They were gripping the edge of the seat so tightly that her knuckles were white. Her nails dug into the fabric. "Don't," she whispered. Her voice was barely audible over the hum of the engine. "Don't look behind you." Michael's blood ran cold. Before he could react, the air behind him shifted. He felt it, a sudden drop in temperature, and the faintest whisper brushing his ear. He turned. The man was inches away, leaning forward, his face twisted into something inhuman. His skin seemed to ripple, as if something underneath was pressing to get out. Michael staggered back, nearly falling into the woman's seat. The bus screeched to a halt, and the driver shouted, "End of the line." But when Michael looked toward the front, the driver's seat was empty. The man stepped forward. The woman finally turned her head toward Michael, and her eyes were wide with terror. "Run," she said. Michael bolted down the aisle, past the empty driver's seat, and threw himself through the open bus doors. He hit the pavement hard and rolled. When he scrambled to his feet, the bus was gone, not driving away, not fading into the distance. Gone. Michael never took the last bus again. And sometimes, when he walks home late at night, he swears he sees the flicker of headlights in the distance and hears the low hum of an engine getting closer.